Welcome to Mysterious Universe, Season 34, Episode 6. Coming up on this show, we've got the danger of false light entities, psychic protection, and the threat of the djinn. I'm your host, Benjamin Grundy, flying solo on this episode. Aaron's been off since we recorded on Tuesday, not feeling too great. We did touch base this morning to see if we could both record, but yeah, it wasn't going to happen. My wife's been sick all week as well, and my kids have been sick, so I've just been holding it off. I didn't feel too great yesterday, but I'm okay. I'm all right today. And I got some good content coming up. We're going to be talking about this new book that just popped up on my radar. It's definitely in the New Age realm. It's by this woman named Maya Zahira. I'll see if I can pop her up on the screen. There she is. So that's your New Age drum circle lady, if ever you've seen one. But she's quite interesting. She's got a number of books written about her experiences in the so-called New Age community, where after a while she started to notice that beyond the surface level love and light vibes of these things, whether it's your sound healing sessions, your energy healing, your Reiki groups, your spiritual gatherings, channeling higher beings, whatever it was, she started to notice a pattern. And it was that amongst these communities and within these groups, beyond that sort of surface level love and light appearance, there was something dark underneath. And she is one of these individuals who claims that she has supersensory abilities in that she can see directly into other dimensions. She can see what's happening behind the scenes. And she went on to claim in a book she launched in 2018, she claimed that there were these dark entities pulling the strings, feeding off people involved in these groups. Now, this is something we've spoken about a bit on the show over the years. It's come up from various people who claim they've seen the same thing. And it touches on the idea of spirit possession, but just in general, the unseen world that goes on beneath the senses of the everyday person. So again, Maya claims that she has the ability to break through that and perceive directly into these other dimensions. So we'll be talking about that and some of her claims about these dark entities in the New Age community. I also want to talk about, very quickly, just a bit of housekeeping. If you go to our website at mysteriousuniverse.org, there's a new post if you scroll down. It's entitled, "We're Hiring. The Future of Mysterious Universe and Our New Podcast in 2026. Now, if you're not aware, I know we've gained a lot of fans since we announced this back in December last year, but this is the last year that Aaron and I will be hosting Mysterious Universe. We've done a solid 18, 19 years worth, and we're ready to step away from the show. Again, we did announce this last year, but I keep seeing comments on YouTube and around the place of people tweeting at us that they're really going to miss us. So I just want to clear some things up. There's no reason to miss us. We're not retiring from podcasting. We're not going anywhere. Aaron and I are starting a new show in 2026. It's not going to be Mysterious Universe, but it'll still be Aaron and I, and we're still doing a podcast. So I don't want to hear this, "I'm going to miss you guys." We're not going anywhere. We're not disappearing off the face of the earth. We're going to do another show. The name is TBA, it's to be announced, and we'll have more details coming out soon. But the reason we have this post up is we're hiring. We are looking to hire 2 hosts to replace us to keep Mysterious Universe going. We still love this show. We want to keep the podcast going. We want to keep it going for the fans as well. So if you feel like you've got what it takes to host this show, if you love the kind of content we speak about on this show, if you're obsessed with UFOs, you love Bigfoot stories, you love, strange psychedelic experiences, ancient history, any of that stuff, apply. Let us know. We've got 2 positions available, and it's a remote role, so you can be anywhere in the world. You don't have to be in Australia. You don't have to be in America. You can be anywhere. And we're looking to hire 2 people before the end of the year. So around December, we're looking to lock in 2 new hosts to start putting out shows and start taking Mysterious Universe in a new direction. So check out the post. We've got all the details for the role there, all the key responsibilities. We're really looking for people who love these topics and who are confident and have talent on the mic. You need to be able to speak well. You need to be able to communicate these ideas. You need to be a really good researcher. You need to be able to read a lot. And there's an apply button down the bottom here. So that'll take you to a form. You just got to fill that out and attach an MP3 if you can. That'll really help your chances of being noticed so we can hear your voice and hear what you sound like. Again, we do want to hire 2 people. So if you've got a friend who likes these topics, if you already have someone you have chemistry with and you want to apply for the position, we'd love to hear from you, because we really are looking at a similar situation with Aaron and I where, we know each other well and we've got a bit of chemistry. So do let us know if that's you and you've got someone in mind you'd like to host the show with. So with that being said, again, I just want to reiterate, Aaron and I aren't going away. And if you're an existing Plus member, well, what does that mean for you? Well, you'll be still getting your regular Mysterious Universe shows every week. You'll be getting your Mysterious Universe Plus episodes on Tuesdays. None of that's going to change. There'll be new hosts. The show, it'll be different, of course, but we'll still be involved behind the scenes. But if you're a Plus member, you will get access to our new show. So you don't have to pay any extra. Your membership doesn't change. On your dashboard, we're going to have a special section we're going to add in later, which will give you access to our new podcast in 2026. And of course, you'll get access to all our membership content for that new podcast as well. So Aaron and I think this is a pretty good deal, that if you're an existing Plus subscriber, you're going to keep getting Mysterious Universe and you're going to get all the content on our new show as well. All you need to do is retain your Mysterious Universe subscription. That's it. So I hope that clears things up. Again, I'll link to that post on mysteriousuniverse.org. It's just on the homepage. And again, we'd love to hear from you if you want to apply. Well, let's get into the content I've got lined up today. Again, this is a new book that just arrived from Maya Zahira, Revealing the False Light Agenda. And again, as I said at the top of the show, this is something that we've seen from different people over the years who claim that there are things going on in other dimensions behind the scenes with these communities and even with mainstream religion as well, that with political thought, with political ideas, touches on the concept of egregores influencing people's thinking and behavior. It's just an interesting topic, one I find fascinating, and I especially like it when people come along who cut to the chase and just say, hey, I can tell you what's going on because I can see it. So Maya is one of those individuals. And she starts off this new book by going back to spring of 2018. Her friend Margaret and her had shuffled into this Christian church and now waiting for the presentation to begin. She said, even though I'd stepped out of my traditional Catholic and Christian upbringing a few decades ago, I was still very open-minded to considering ideas from many different faiths, including Christianity. She said, my protege Marjorie and I sometimes attended events and workshops together to enrich our curious minds. So she said they took a seat. They were kind of the third back from the front. And she said the event facilitator approached the podium and introduced the main speaker who would be discussing the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Now, she was eager to learn more about how she could utilize, she says, the vocabulary of this church, because she had often come across, ever since she'd gotten involved in New Age things, that conservative Christians had basically told her that she was working with the devil. So Maya said she wanted to go along to this thing to get to know some people and maybe break down some of those barriers and dissolve some of those, or some of that dogma, I should say. So she said, my eyes are fully focused ahead at the woman speaking at the podium when something suddenly caught me off guard. She says she was struck hard on the right side of her forehead and temple. And it hurt so bad, she was like screamed out in pain, hands covering her head. And she looks out from her hands and she said, what I saw completely shocked me. She said it was a huge entity made of pulsating plasma energy hovering over the entire congregation. She said it was so expansive that it was nearly as large as the entire church. As a lifelong clairvoyant and psychic, she said, I had seen a variety of spiritual beings in my life, but I had never seen anything that came close to this. Anything close to this size, she said. With my mouth agape, I stared up at it, and I had an instant claircognizant knowledge that it was a male shapeshifter entity that was pretending to be God. She said he was checking up on his followers and soaking up all of the energy of worship. She said my mind was blown away by the realization that a negative shapeshifter entity could take form within a church, that it could pretend to be God, and that it could greedily feed on the energy of adoration from the worshippers. How is this even possible, she asked. She said, you see, ever since I had a very jarring run-in with a powerful, she calls them false light entity 2 years prior, an ability had been activated within me to see, feel, and discern these imposter entities in a way that no one else could. She said, in fact, as a result of that traumatic entity attack back in 2016, I'd experienced an awakening of a depth of knowledge about spiritual warfare and so much more. So she says that this entire story, that entire background, is described in full detail in her first book, which came out in 2018. And I had to just go back and get a copy of this. I wanted to hear what went on. Like how did this shocking event unlock all these abilities? So this book is Darkness Disguised as Light, The Hidden Truth About Psychic Protection and the Illusion Matrix. So I went back to this one and again, to give her background, she's worked as a healer and teacher for 25 years. And she says, I experienced an intense, terrifying, powerful, and mind-bogglingly psychic attack that included black magic, psychological manipulation, sexual violation, and attacks by dark entities, including demons. She said this attack occurred because I came into contact with some colleagues in my spiritual community who were secretly working with dark forces. In short, she said, I was able to see the truth of what was really happening, and because I could see past the illusion, I became a primary target. So she gives a bit of her background and her upbringing. She was adopted, and as an infant, she was taken in by a conservative Irish Catholic family. She became the youngest of 5 children, so very much raised in this traditional Catholic household. But as she was growing up, she had, as you might guess, numerous mystical experiences starting in early childhood. So when she was a toddler, for example, she knew that one of the priests at the church was different because she would watch as, during Mass, she could see a glowing light emerging from his head. As a child, she said she could sense and see energy flowing through her body. She could also sense the emotions of others around her. She remembers when she was 4 years old, she was sitting in the church pew next to her mother, when she suddenly had a very vivid flashback from a time before she was born. Now, she goes on to describe something we've heard before, which is this idea of a kind of staging area before this incarnation, where the final details, the final agreements of your life, your future incarnation are being, I guess, signed off on. She describes being like a light entity herself, a ball of light, and these other light beings going through these arrangements and agreements, and an agreement specifically with her adoptive mother in this life, who agreed to take her on as a daughter. And yeah, she gives all the details. We've heard stuff like this before. She started to see ghosts and spirits in her preteens. She tells a story of riding a bike with a friend, or riding past the mortuary and saying, stop, what's this strange man doing standing outside of the mortuary? And she said it was this old guy, looking left and right, really confused. He looked like he didn't know where he was. And a friend says, what are you talking about? What guy? I can't see anyone there. So she was the only one that could see this guy. The implication is, obviously, he had recently died. In her teens, she said the spiritual experiences increased exponentially. She started to have precognitive dreams, telepathy with friends, clairvoyance, clairaudience. She said on numerous occasions, I had visions of Jesus, Mother Mary, angels, and on a few occasions also encounters with dark beings. And so the general gist of her upbringing is she was very pious, a bit of a dark sheep, but very dedicated to her prayer, dedicated to her Bible and her religion, very much separate to her adopted family. Although they were Catholics, they very much were, going to church to keep up appearances, and they didn't have as much dedication as she had. So, for example, when she had some of these visions, she opened up to her mother, and her mother kind of said, well, of course you're going to have these visions. You're so dedicated. Like, you're so dedicated to God. Doesn't surprise me that you're going to have these visions. So her experience, especially when she says she's encountered dark beings, very reminiscent of some of the stories we've heard over the years of these very pious individuals, very dedicated to their faith, who, again, live these pious lives, but also have mystical abilities. And often those mystical abilities come with a price, and that price is paid in these tribulations with what is essentially demonic activity, whether it's encounters with dark beings and being tested in ways that most of us could only, can't even imagine. So she gives a couple of examples, like when she was, in her early teens, she woke up one morning to the clock radio playing some heavy metal music, like rock and roll music. And she thought it was in the music, but she heard the words, "Satan is your savior," repeated to her over and over again. She thought it must be in this song. So she kind of rolled over to turn it off. And there was a man, like a young man, standing next to her bed, she said. He was like in his early 20s. She had no idea how he had gotten in. And he was wearing this dark black robe with a hood over his head, and his skin was very, very pale, like Men in Black style pale skin. And she believes that he was the one giving her this message that Satan is your savior. After this, he vanished. And so this is an example of these strange experiences, these tests that she started to go through. She said, as a young adult during and after college, I went through a period of spiritual crisis. I tried to make sense of my faith, she said. When I moved away from home to attend college and start work, she said that questioning increased even more. She said, I was working as a teacher at the local Catholic school, and although I love the faith and my upbringing, it felt like there were other truths out there as well. She said, eventually I left the Catholic Church and began exploring a more eclectic spiritual path that still includes the mysticism of the Catholic Church, plus many diverse teachings from a variety of traditions. So I feel like this is where it starts to unravel, because she does describe like how she was asking Mother Mary for protection, like very much within the Catholic spiritual sphere. She would ask for protection, and because of her mystical abilities, she would see when this protection was given to her. She often saw higher spiritual beings looking out for her. She had a number of like very positive experiences, visions of heaven, for example. And so you got to question, like, if, yes, there was tribulations, but if she's having this protection from the Catholic belief system, why leave it? I get that you're curious, but if it's working in that way, why leave it? Anyway, in 1997, she said she experienced a huge personal and spiritual transformation. She said, I started studying energy healing, Reiki, intuitive development, and even sacred movement and belly dancing. So you've gone from being protected by Mother Mary to sacred belly dancing. She said, once I kicked through the wall of mainstream existence, I never looked back. So after opening herself to all these mystical pathways, she starts to notice a couple of red flags with this new world that she's experiencing. And let me give you some of the examples. So she goes to a spiritually oriented drum circle at a yoga studio. And she says, I'd been to a couple of these before and they're always very interesting. But she said, I became aware of a strange dark energy emerging a few feet to my right. She said, I tried to ignore it, but eventually she has to turn and look. And one of the women in this drum circle is writhing around like she's being possessed. She said she was kind of screaming and out of control in her chair and twitching and shaking. And Maya said she's looking at this just going, is anyone going to do anything about this? But everyone just ignored it. They acted like it was normal. And the question she asks is, why hadn't the drum circle leader cleared the energy of the space before this event? Why hadn't there been any energetic protection for the participants? A few months later, she's at a women's prayer group at the local church, and she had come across churchgoers who interpreted her abilities as demonic. And so again, she wanted to go to this event to kind of build bridges and, get people to know her and understand that she's not worshipping the devil. I don't know whether she was successful, but she turns up to this prayer group and it's full of old ladies. Like the room is full of old ladies, and the room feels off. Like it's making her dizzy. It's hard to breathe. It feels oddly stuffy and like, she's walking through some kind of mass in the room. And then she realizes that all the women in the room, all these old ladies, they're all dead. She said, as soon as I tuned into it, so she talks about psychically tuning into these moments, she said, I saw close to 50 ghosts crammed into the already crowded space. She said, I looked around and saw that they were all women, mostly elderly, and seemingly harmless. Intuitively, she said, I knew they had all been prior members of the church when they had been alive, and they eagerly wanted to be a part of the prayer circle. So they had never left. There's just these spirits hanging around. So again, she asks these questions of, why doesn't anyone do anything about this? Why don't they clear the space out? Why don't they help these spirits move on? How could they not know? And I think I don't know why she's asking these questions. I don't know what she expects. This isn't something that most churches deal with, in my understanding. She's talking about her world, her kind of psychic new age world. Anyway, she said the following week she was working with one of her clients, one of her healing clients, and she noticed this woman's chakra in her brow, she says, her third eye, you might say, has just been completely blocked. And she was surprised because this client of hers was, very spiritual and had this psychic vision before, but now it was like completely gone. So she asked this woman, like, what's going on with you? I can tell that your third eye's closed, your psychic vision's completely atrophied. What's going on? And this woman said, I'm not surprised because I've been going to these yoga classes, and every time I go into the room there, I'm just accosted by ghosts. They're very annoying. So she says these spirits keep badgering me and coming up to me and trying to get my attention. So she said the way I deal with it is I just close off my psychic vision and ignore them. So she says, I guess I've been doing it too much and it's all closed up. And so Maya says she started to notice this pattern. While some facilitators, she says, and location owners were doing a pristine job of setting up the space and clearing things out, she said most were completely uninformed about the importance of clearing and protecting their space. She said this realization was brought to my attention even more with the next event I attended. So she goes to this retreat, and it's one of these like women dealing with trauma retreats. It kind of reminds me of like this thing. That's the way I envision it. Just women screaming in the forest. Yeah, something like this. Oh, this just looks exhausting. I don't know how anyone can find that therapeutic. So I imagine it's like something like that. One of those stepping into your power things. And the organizer at the start of this group, there was a bunch of women there, and the organizer says, look, when everyone gets home, you're likely going to feel drained, depressed, negative, and just completely worn out. And just so you know, that's all part of the healing process. So long story short, Maya goes to this event and she notices the energy's quite off. There's something quite off about the whole thing. And when the attendees are finished and they're all gone home, she knows a lot of these women. So she says she kind of psychically tunes into them. And she finds out that every single woman that went to that event had gone home with entities attached to them, these dark entities. That's why the energy was off. That's why they all felt so drained and, depressed and awful when they left. It's because they were going there and picking up these, possessing spirits. So this is all leading up to this event in 2016. She said it was late April and she received a message from one of her colleagues named Elizabeth. And it was this vague message saying that there's a private meeting for this community matter, and it was their spiritual community, their kind of new age community. And she felt her stomach churning because she's like, oh, something's telling me this is not good. Anyway, she couldn't get back through to Elizabeth, so she ended up calling her friend Anna. And Anne let her know that they needed to come together for this meeting because there were some concerns about one of the healers who had recently attended one of these meetings, and his name is Jeffrey. And Anne explained that during this event, Jeffrey had been, sharing energy balancing sessions with some of the attendees, and Jennifer, one of the guests, reported that partway through receiving her healing sessions, she had opened her eyes to see a demon's face with glowing red eyes superimposed over Jeffrey's face. Now, Jennifer is supposedly a clairvoyant and healer as well, and so she was immediately convinced that this guy had a demon attached to him, and he was, this demon was using him to drain the energy out of these women in the group. So it's kind of a funny scenario, but this is what these guys deal with, right? So Anne wanted to know what Maya thought about this. And as soon as she mentions this guy, Jeffrey, Maya said that her mind goes back because she's known this guy for years. She goes back to this event 3 years ago where she first met Jeffrey, and he's a charming guy. He's into all the same things, obviously. He's one of these energy healers. And they formed a close friendship. One day they decided to exchange healings. So basically, Jeffrey will go and do one of his modalities for Maya, and then afterwards Maya will do some Reiki thing for him. They do an exchange. Now she says after this exchange, within the next 24 hours, Maya said she started having these obsessive sexual thoughts about Jeffrey. And she said it was bizarre. She'd known him for a while. She'd never thought about him this way. And the feeling felt kind of artificial, like the thoughts weren't really coming from her. Anyway, she said the next time he came to my house for a visit, he started flirting with me right away. Now, she tells him, look, we need to keep this relationship professional. We're working with clients and, I'm not really interested in that way. But she succumbs to his advances and they have this intense 2-week fling. Now, the fling only lasted 2 weeks because she had a vision one morning of what was actually going on with this guy. She said she woke up, and like we often hear with these things, it was like a movie playing in her forehead. She said, I was shown a string of images as well as the meaning of the images. She said, first I saw a replay of myself receiving the recent energy healing session from Jeffrey, and she's face down on this treatment table, completely relaxed, unaware of what was really happening. Meanwhile, Jeffrey's standing next to the table with his hand outstretched, placing an energy cord in her root chakra. She said, my guides explained to me that Jeffrey had then used that energy cord to send me sexual urges, in order to manipulate me and to sleep with him. And so it's funny, this idea of these energy cords, I find this really fascinating. We covered a fantastic book a couple of years ago now from Denise Lin called, it's a similar thing. It's Energy Strands, the ultimate guide to clearing the cords that are constricting your life. And the idea is that when we have relationships and interactions and run-ins with people on another level, in another dimension, there is a connection that's made, and that connection is something tangible. It's something physical in that other dimension. So one example would be if you're married, you have this strand connecting you to your partner, connecting you to your husband or wife, and it's strong and it's bright, and there is this permanent emotional, spiritual, but also in another dimension, it's like a physical connection. You're hitched to this person. You receive all sorts of information and, emotions, all sorts of things through this. In this book from Denise Lynn, she also talks about connections with pets, with strangers, with former lovers, with ideas, with political thought and, notions, all connecting to our spiritual body in some various way. She talks about how, for example, if you have a lover and you formed this energy connection, this strand with this lover, and then this lover broke up with you, but you never released this connection. You never got over this person. You're still thinking about them. You're still feeding your mental energy is keeping this connection alive. Well, Lynn says that in some of these cases that she's seen with her clients, that person that you were connected to, that you had a relationship with, then goes on to have random sexual encounters with other people or emotional dating and, getting involved with other people. But because you still have that connection with that person, she said you receive the kind of weird spiritual stuff from these other random people. It somehow comes back to you. She has all these examples in her book of clients that were getting like this kind of dirty spiritual energy from all these other people from these energy cords. And so I'll link to that book in the show notes. Again, it's Energy Strands. It's really, really fun. It's a really good read. But this is what Maya is describing, that this guy, this is apparently shown to her in this vision, this guy had just plugged into her to feed her this these desires. And she said, I was told through these energy cords, his goal was to drain life force energy from each of the women that he was in touch with. So also in this vision, she saw this Jeffrey guy doing this with multiple women, like placing his hands on them, doing the healing sessions that he does. But each time he touched them, he would leave one of these so-called spiritual connections, one of these metaphysical connections back to him. And he would send them these powerful thought forms and sexual urges to manipulate them into having sex with him. And that's what was going around about this guy, is that he was sleeping with all these women in this group. And that's what she surmised, that this is how he was doing it, because he wasn't particularly, super attractive or anything. So she confronted him the next day. And this is pretty brazen to go, hey, I had this vision of you're manipulating all these women with your sexual energy. And he didn't deny it. This guy just said, wow, that's impressive that you could see all that. I'm actually impressed with your ability. Didn't say it wasn't true, didn't deny it, just kind of said, yeah, good on you for noticing, and just went on with his day. Apparently, she said she was serious and straightforward in this discussion, and he said at the end, look, can I give you a hug, and, thanks for your feedback. And she says during the hug, he tried to make a move on her. She said, I told him to never contact me again. Now, a few months later, she said something truly fascinating happened. Her friend Raina and her were at this other community spiritual event, and this guy, Jeffrey, was in attendance. She said Raina was sitting to my right with her boyfriend, and Jeffrey went over to her, told her something. She smiled and nodded. She said then Jeffrey came over to me, and rather than standing in front of me like he had done with my friend Raina, he came right up to my ear and placed his hand lightly on my shoulder. He said, I just want to let you know I'm going to be leaving now. And she's like, okay. Then as he turned, his hand had been on her shoulder and he starts caressing her arm back and forth. And she said it was weird. It's like all of a sudden she's injected with this sexual attraction for him. Like she's been basically disgusted with the guy, and she's all of a sudden these feelings come into her mind. And seconds later, she realizes what's happened. She looks down And with her psychic vision, she can see that one of these strands, one of these cords is connecting her to him again. And she's like, hell no, he's plugged me in again. He's plugged this cord into me. So after that, she said she never let him come near her again. She never let him touch her. So anyway, back to this phone call. So this is the current day with this friend, Anne, who's concerned about this guy. She says, what do you think, Maya? This woman said she saw a face of a demon on the guy. Jennifer said she saw it. Is there any chance Jeffrey's being controlled by a demon? If it's true, we need to do something about it. Now, Maya said, look, I've had some negative experiences with him in the past. I can't speak for Jennifer's experiences, but look, it's possible. But look, I can't give you a definitive answer. Basically, she doesn't want anything to do with it. Maya says, I just didn't want to get involved. So she declines to help. And Anne says, thanks for the info, and I'll, take it up with the group. The following week, she gets this troubling email from Anne. Anne says, look, I met with Jeffrey privately, and it was very heartfelt. I had a real honest, deep conversation with him, and it was all very sincere. And she says, I feel like all the concerns we had and everything you said were basically because he hurt your feeling. And I've decided to hire him as one of the featured energy healers for our healing center. And Maya's like, oh my God, he's plugged into you. He used his powers. He's stuck you with one of the cords, and he's probably sleeping with you too. She doesn't say this to her friend Anne. She just sends her an email saying, thanks for the info. Best of luck with it. And then a week later, she gets another email from this woman. And it's like this woman's going on the attack. This woman, Anne, says, I've received all this intuitive information about you, and I was horrified at what I discovered. And she writes in this email all this personal information about, struggles that Maya had had and stuff she had never shared with anyone. And somehow this woman knew about all of it. Maya said, my gut immediately knew she had done this as an ego-based power play to prove to me how powerful she was. So later, Maya said she's in her backyard and writing in her journal, and these two crows appear in her backyard and start watching her. And she says it's very strange. They're like glaring and squawking at her. And every time she looks up at them, she gets the crazy thought that they're connected to this woman, Anna. And so she says, look, it's time to set a boundary on this whole energetic level, and I don't want to deal with any of this. She asks for all this dark energy to be cleared out. She asks for the negative energies to be replaced with peace, does one of her little spells. And she says, I went through my house and found any objects that may have been connected with Jeffrey or Anne, placed them in a Tupperware container, filled it with water, and drew Reiki symbols on the container. I said a prayer for protection, she said, and then put it in the freezer to freeze the negative energy from these objects. So I love that. If you're having any problems with anything at all, if anyone's giving you grief, just go and get an object that they've given you and put it in the freezer. That'll fix it. So this works to a degree, but she keeps getting this kind of interference in her life. She gets a feeling that, these ravens and crows are watching her. She starts having strange, almost demonic dreams about this Jeffrey guy. It doesn't feel quite right. And this is where this woman, Darlene, enters the picture. Maya said she attended this public spiritual event about 10 minutes from her home. She meets this woman named Darlene, who channels messages from the angels. And so Maya says, I just had an instant affinity with this woman. She was warm and she gave me a big hug, and we felt like we were on the same level, and I felt like I could talk to someone who understood. And this woman Darlene, claimed to have abilities much like Maya's. She said, during my session with Darlene, I shared everything that had been happening with Jeffrey and Anna. And this woman, Darlene, takes a few minutes to psychically tune in and says, oh, yes, he's definitely working with a demon. In fact, he is fully and willingly possessed by this demon. I rarely see a full possession such as this. This is dangerous. She says he is clearly sourcing energy off of many people as well as manipulating a whole web of people. Based on what I'm seeing, she says, I recommend that you have absolutely no contact with him in the future and block him on Facebook, delete him from your phone, make sure he can make no connection with you at all. And she says, Maya, you have a tendency to not fully trust yourself and the things you see, but you should trust yourself. The things you perceive are spot on correct. She says it was a wonderful validation from this woman. Finally, someone who understands. This was someone that she felt was ahead of her spiritually, who had even more refined spiritual vision. She said, Maya, those of us who walk so fully in the light are often targeted by the darkness. She said, when I met you briefly more than 15 years ago, I recognized you immediately as a light worker, and light workers are attacked by demonic energies all the time. And so she gives her this spiel. And, this woman, Darlene, talks about her experiences of being attacked by dark entities and having to overcome it with her angels. And Maya hears this and she's like, that's just like my life. So these guys are really tight. And she ended up going to a couple of these healing sessions with Darlene's angels. And Darlene shared about how she had started working with angels more than 40 years ago. She tells this very personal story about how Archangel Michael appeared before her. And so Maya says she's hearing this, and during Darlene's session of explaining all this, Maya starts to feel this weird pressure in and around her throat. She said, I felt a warmth flowing through different parts of my body, including my sore shoulder. She said a few times during this healing session from this woman, Darlene, I opened my eyes. She said there was this weird red light coming through the room. And there are other people in this healing session, all with their eyes closed. She says she can see this red light flowing through the room. But that night, when she gets home, Maya says it was weird because my sleep was really restless and I felt sick, like I was coming down with the flu. She said my body felt shaky and weak. My cat was acting strangely as well. She said that the cat would come and sit on her and trying to push her body in certain directions. Like the cat was really concerned about her. She said the following morning, things took a bizarre turn and I woke up to the sound of my alarm. Slowly opening my eyes, I clairvoyantly saw a large creature standing beside my bed, she said. Due to his appearance, I immediately assumed he was some sort of earth elemental. And she describes this thing. She said his skin was grayish. He had a human-looking face and a short, pointy animal ears on top of his head. He was so tall that he was bent perpendicular at his hips with his head turned sideways, looking right at me with an expression of curiosity. She said even though he did not look threatening, I didn't want him there. I didn't want anything to do with him. She said I prayed to Archangel Michael to please get this guy out of there. She hit the snooze button on her alarm, closed her eyes, went back to sleep. 10 minutes later, her alarm goes off again. She opens her eyes. She's like, this tall grey elemental thing is still there in the same place, bent over a bed, looking right at her. Once again, she says, I hit the snooze button, close my eyes. She says in her mind, I'm not comfortable with you being here. Please leave. She falls back to sleep and she says, I was really good at falling asleep. Her alarm goes off again. She opens her eyes. This strange creature is still in the room. And this time there's other things in the room too. She says there's this blonde, human-sized woman in this strange flowing white dress that has these lights shining from it. They look like LEDs within the dress, she says. And around this woman is this fantasia of swirling small fairies and other little elemental creatures flying around the room. She says, I hear the word leader in my mind. She said it led her to believe that this blonde woman was the leader of all these other beings. Now that night, remember, this is all after she's had this healing session from this woman, Darlene, who channels the angels. It's getting a bit suspicious. That Saturday night, she said, I had a very disturbing dream, and in the dream, my soul was flying through the spirit realm, and I was trying to escape from these three powerful entities that were trying to attack me. She said with their mouths, they were trying to suck all the energy out of my crown chakra. It was serious spiritual warfare, and I fought back and tried to escape from these things. She said I woke up abruptly as I felt my body having an orgasm. As I opened my eyes, I was shocked to see a demon standing next to my bed. And it had Jeffrey's face. It had his physical build, yet these small horns protruding from his head. His skin was grey and hairless and sort of rubbery looking, she said. This demon was completely naked and had a massive erection. I immediately realized that Jeffrey's demon had been messing with me sexually to try and feed off my energy. So she's like, all of this stuff must be this Jeffrey demon. She gets up to go to the bathroom. The demon vanishes. She comes back to bed. She says all these protection prayers. And as soon as she wakes up in the morning, she's obviously totally freaked out. She's like, how could I have been attacked like that? This woman, Darlene, used her angels to protect me. I don't understand how this could have happened. Now I feel vulnerable and scared. So she smudges the whole house. She meets up with her friends for lunch to try and get some support. And while she's chatting at lunch with a friend, she said, I felt Jeffrey's demon appear on my right side and plug into my root chakra again. She said, I was suddenly so sleepy and exhausted that I could have fallen asleep right there at the restaurant. That night, she falls asleep at like 9 p.m., wakes up at 1:30 p.m. the next day. So she's like, what is going on? I'm so drained. What is happening to me? So she desperately seeks out help from this woman, Darlene, and her angel army, Archangel Michael and all these angels that are working with Darlene. Darlene agrees to do a remote clearing. And she says she didn't know how these entities had gotten through. It must be like a powerful demon from Jeffrey. So Maya's like, okay, hopefully you can take care of it. So that night she goes to bed. She said, I didn't feel Jeffrey's energy anymore, but I felt something new. It was a demon hovering above my crown chakra, trying to block my connection to the divine, and it was keeping an eye on me. She said, I had a strong understanding that this thing was Jeffrey's supervisor, that Jeffrey had not succeeded in his mission and they were sending in the big guns. So again, she's in this situation where she doesn't know what to do. She reaches out to Darlene again. Darlene tells her that she's now under her special angel protection. And Maya's like, it gave me a lot of comfort. But still, all this disturbing stuff kept happening to me. For example, the next day she's at Walmart and she's walking down. She sees two young men walking side by side, late teens, in one of the Walmart aisles. They're wearing blue jeans and T-shirts. She said they were in the process of coming out of the aisle, and in the split second it took for them to see me and turn the corner, she said I immediately recognized that they were demonically possessed. Their eyes were completely black, and they looked directly at me with animosity, as though I was their target. Once they turned the corner, they were walking right behind me, and I knew I was in trouble. She said intuitively, I knew they were going to try and place something harmful in my energy field on the back of my neck. So she said, thinking quickly, I jerked the cart, got out of there, ran to the car, and drove home. But when she gets home, she notices her neck starts feeling weird. It's starting to hurt. She wakes up in the middle of that night to use the bathroom. She said, as soon as I sat up in bed, I saw a strange scavenger demon watching me from the bedside table. She said it was small, less than a foot tall, grey and hairless, like a little, goblin or something. How did this get here? She said, I thought I was protected by Darlene's angels. The next morning, she says, my neck is killing me. She wakes up with this horrible crick in her neck. She goes outside to do some healing meditation. And she said, my jaw dropped as I looked above my house to see demons flying in a circle above my roof. They were circling outside my set-up dome of protection several feet above my house as if they were waiting for an opportunity to get through. She clears her mind and tries to, cleanse everything. And then she gets a vision of another demon attached to her head, like gnawing into her head. She said, through my intention, I tried to remove them. The one on my back dug in even deeper, and the one above my head hissed at me. She's like, crap, why is this happening? I messaged Darlene about this. What's going on? She says we scheduled another private appointment. After a couple of days of demons in and above my house and attached to my energy, she said I texted Darlene again to see if she could do some long-distance healing. Now, Darlene does get in touch with her and tells her that, Maya, you're special, and I believe that you are an angel, as I am a lead. She basically says, I'm a leader of 12 angels that I need to unite on earth so that we can change the world. And she says, Maya, I believe you are one of those angels. You're special. And Maya's like, oh my God, I don't know if I believe this, but that's amazing. Now that Maya's having all these issues, this woman, Darlene, is incontactable. She can't reach her. She's not returning her calls, ignoring her emails. She can't get through to her at all. She's like, what is going on with this woman? Anyway, after a few days of dealing with all this nonsense, she has a phone call with a friend of hers named Sandra. Now, Sandra had also recently been seeing this Darlene woman, this angel, leader of angels. Now, Sandra said it was only 5 minutes into their last phone call with this woman, Darlene, that Darlene had told her that she thinks that both Sandra and her young daughter are part of an elite angelic crew who have a special mission for the world. And Maya's like, that's exactly what she told me. She said, Darlene told me that she is the mother of this group. This is Sandra, her friend. She's the mother of this group of angels and that she is responsible for all of us. Now, in addition to Sandra, she said, my friend Raina had also recently connected with Darlene for spiritual consultation. And now, along with Sandra and myself, Raina was also experiencing symptoms of these demonic attacks. Raina's mum was having mysterious health issues, and the electronics in Raina's house and car were going haywire. Sandra was also having really odd experiences. Crows were following her as she walked along the street. She was hearing voices in her house at night, demonic images showing up on her shower wall. Her young daughter was waking up screaming with nightmares. Later, the next day, Maya's doing yoga and she stands up to roll the yoga mat up, and she happens to glance over in this room and she notices she's got Darlene's angel book that was given to her. And she takes a closer look at the cover of the book, and she claims that hidden in the cover of this Darlene woman's book are all these faces of demons. And she calls her friend Sandra. She's like, Sandra, you've got Darlene's book, don't you? The one with the angels? And she's like, yeah, go and take a look at the cover. Tell me what you see. And it's like the veil is suddenly lifted and they realize there's these hidden demonic faces in the artwork of the cover of the book. She said, I was shocked. I was horrified. All this entity demonic attacks had started when I'd begun working with Darlene. She said it started as soon as I'd purchased her pin and her book. The attacks had gone through the roof after that. She said I had even brought her pin into my bedroom for protection while I slept. So she's convinced that the book and this pin had acted as a kind of portal, allowing all these demons from this Darlene woman, who it's clear is now some kind of working with these dark forces. So she said, I ended up taking the angel pin and the book, wrapped them both in cloth, put them in a box, drew Reiki symbols on the box. She said she put them in the garage. I don't know why she didn't do the freezer thing. She should have filled it with water and put them in the freezer. And yeah, she's convinced that the pin of this woman was a portal letting all these demons through. So after she removes all this stuff from her house, she's like, pretty much everything stopped. After 36 hours, there was no further attacks. And she said, I started to think about this acquaintance of mine, Crystal. And there was this friend of hers who was seeing Darlene. This very sweet, innocent young woman named Crystal. And she'd been under severe demonic attacks for a few years, and Darlene was helping her with these attacks. Now, Maya realized that Darlene didn't actually help people experience psychic attacks, but rather she, or whatever entity was controlling her, was the one that was obviously causing these attacks. So she said, I began to feel very concerned about Crystal. So that evening she sends her friend Crystal a text. She says, "Hi Crystal, I'm concerned about some things. Please be very careful with trusting those around you, especially your teachers. Please use caution with any jewelry you may have gotten from them." Didn't name names, just thought this is the best way I can help without, explicitly mentioning this woman, Darlene. 3 a.m. that morning, she goes to bed. She wakes up at 3 in the morning. She's violently jolted awake. She said, "My eyes flew open and a few feet above me is a blob of energy that looks like a hot, pulsating electric white light, like this plasma thing floating above her." She said, "Lightning fast, this entity reached into my body, grabbed my soul, and in one violent movement tried to yank it out of my body." Maya said, "I gasped, then blinked in utter shock. It wasn't successful." She said this entity, which had looked like a formless blob just moments ago, seemed to be vaguely taking on the form of an angel. Still somewhat formless, there was the impression of wings starting to extend out from either side of this plasma-like being. Suddenly, she said, I became completely aware of emotions and thoughts coming from this entity. She said it was pure wrath. Without actually hearing any sound, she said I received a message loud and clear in my head. It was undeniable. This being said to her, "Don't mess with her. She's mine." Now, she wasn't sure whether this being was talking about Crystal or talking about Darlene. But still, Maya was terrified out of her mind. She said, "I turned to my side, covered my head with my arms, sobbing, hyperventilating. I was afraid this entity was going to kill me." This continued all night. She was too scared to move. She basically waited until sunrise. She said, "I got up with wobbly legs, went to the bathroom, splashed my face with water." She said her head was killing. And she called her friend Raina, and basically just a few hours after they came to the conclusion that there'd been no more issues, but after she had messaged Crystal, she had been violently attacked by this angry dark being. So ultimately, she cancels all contact with Darlene. Immediately, Darlene wants to come to her house. She burns Darlene's pin and angel book, and she says it's kind of crazy because there's this wild flame coming out when she tries to burn it. She says she sees faces in the flame. But she thinks that's it. I'm past this. I've cut off all contact. But in the end, she's still seeing these demonic entities in her psychic field. She's not free of it. She's still having these encounters. This weird Jeffrey demon is still plugged into her. How is she going to solve this? So we have the answer, and I'm going to leave it here for our free YouTube viewers. Forgive me, I got to do some plus content for our members, so we're going to conclude the story of how she ultimately solves this. But you can see how messy this is. And on one hand, you can look at this and go, yeah, all these people are wacko. They're all crazy. They're all full of shit. Of course, Darlene isn't an angel and channeling angels and she's going to find the 11 remaining angels and change the world. Obviously, it's bullshit. But these people fall for it. But not only do they fall for it in a sense that they believe this, but they come under the influence of the entities that are behind this. Because on the one hand, again, you can say that these people are just crazy. They're making it up. But it's not that simple. It's not so simple to say they're just insane, because these people aren't insane. They might be gullible. They might be overly credulous. But, they have good intentions. But it's clear that there's something else behind the scenes. There's something else that goes beyond just a ruse or, people who are confused. There's something else that's taking advantage of them. There's something else controlling these people. And it's that something else that seems to be behind it. And so we're going to get more details on what that something else is. She ultimately believes she's identified this being. It's not the only one she runs into. There's multiple encounters with them because she ends up leaving this location. She moves to a different location in the United States and encounters another one of these. And again, it's because she doesn't learn her lesson. She remains in this new age world, this insatiable desire for these spiritual, mystical curiosities. She keeps running into these, for lack of a better word, demonic entities that are taking advantage of people, ruining people's lives, literally sucking their energy out. So we're going to hear more of that in our Plus extension coming up when we look at the work of Maya. What's her last name again? Maya Zahira. That's the most recent book revealing the false light agenda. We'll be looking at that. She had a follow-up, Darkness Disguised as Light. That was the first one. And then this one as well, The Dark Side of Spiritual Healers, Teachers, and Light Workers, Abusive, Predatory, and Supernatural Behaviors Behind the Facade of Love and Light. I love it when this stuff gets exposed. Because again, a lot of it is just, it's darkness underneath the outermost layers. If you want to get access to that, head to mysteriousuniverse.org/plus. Sign up today. Help support your favorite show. Don't forget to check out on our website the applications to sign up for, well, to apply to be a host of this show. Because again, this is our last year as hosts for Aaron and I. Make sure if you're interested, you let us know and send through your application and a bit of an audio file so we know what you sound like as well. Make sure you check that out. That's a wrap for this free edition of MU. Thanks for listening. If you want to sign up for Plus, mysteriousuniverse.org/plus has all the details. You get access to the big extensions we do on these shows every single Friday. And of course, Plus members get an exclusive show every single Tuesday as well. If you sign up for our MU Max tier, you get our 19 years of back catalog available on the website. And of course, if you sign up for Plus before the end of the year, you'll get access to our new show in 2026, along with all the good Mysterious Universe content moving forward. So check it out, mysteriousuniverse.org/plus. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're on Plus, stick around for the great stuff after the break. For everyone else, we'll catch you next week.